idea. But they had proven track record, in being able to make a successful product.
But so they had the proven track record in the team in some ways,
but
right?
Potentially, it was possible in the past, but you would argue potentially, Fredrik, that it's not the same now?
No, I feel that if you take 2020, 2021, it was enough to have one of the classical 5 T's like team, traction, technology, TAM, and
target audience.
Exactly, timing as well. So then you basically, to some extent, you could have a really good team and you don't really have an idea. You could probably raise a significant amount of money on that, especially if you're in one of the biggest cities in Europe or especially the US. But now that, to some extent, it's still true, I think, but it's like the general requirements that VCs or investors in general have is much more, much higher now.
Yeah, but you summarized it before camera. It's a little bit like, let's see if I can say it right. It's a little bit like the pre-seed capital or the very, very early stage capital. That is that's what's dried up. So if you bootstrap, if you make it through what normally would have meant that you got early investment, and you get to where you have shown traction, you have customers, you have a business, you have a operating model of some kind. Then it's a little bit more back to normal. But it's a little bit like people are scared of this super early. Would that be a summary?
Yeah, I think it's good.
So money is there, but you need to have come further.
Yeah, exactly. So both the founders and the VCs have an issue with that, I think.
Yeah.
So to some extent, you could say whatever was pre-seed before is now seed in terms of requirements, but the money is more or less the same.
What do you think have changed? Is it that the capital has gone down, or is it more people actually seeking funding these days, or is something else?
Yeah, probably a multifaceted picture, but one of them is I think we now have a war, or a couple of wars around us. We
different
have
economic climate.
Economic climate is totally different. And to some extent, I think this is a good move, to be honest. Like I think everyone saw a lot of companies that maybe not should have been invested in a couple of years ago. And that's obviously a subjective feeling that I have, but it was like, really? From what? Like from a PowerPoint?
Based on what?
Yeah, exactly. A PowerPoint, a good word. And to some extent, I think this is a kind of good move. It forces founders to come a little bit further, but it also probably makes it harder for the ones that already have a hard time. So if you're not living in Stockholm or Gothenburg, the bigger cities, or Berlin or whatever, then it's become even harder, which I think is
because one discussion around VC has been, how can we make VC more diverse, more inclusive, and how can we break the sort of the normal bubble, so to speak?
Yeah.
Do you think that has become harder or easier or the same? Because the scary point is when it's hard to get funding, you need to do better. But is the funding then going back to the normal crew, so to speak, or is it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think my general perspective is that I think this whole move it's a big change, but it's fair and it's good. I think, generally speaking.
Generally speaking.
And the problems that we had before, like people outside of the larger cities didn't get the same funding opportunities as the ones in the bigger cities. That problem is still a fact. It's not solved, and it's not. To some extent, it's even worse now. But so I think it's just shifted.
Two different problems, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's a good thing. It was a slight inflation, I would say, like inflated scene.
We've had several in the VC business. I'm talking about Evelina Antila, the CEO of Well Street, and she has been saying on stage is a little bit like maybe to some degree was unhealthy the industry and how it worked in 2020, 2021, and it was inflated in many ways, and now it's more fundamentals needs to be there.
Yeah.
So and that is the healthy part.
Yeah, definitely.
We actually have a topic later about trying to see, given you're basically a serial entrepreneur, I would say, you have funded like 5-6-ish companies or something, right?
Yeah, and a few of them were killed even before they got a name.
But you have a lot of experience here, and I think a lot of people are interested in hearing, your best advice for them. to how to get started. But let's talk more about that a bit later. I think that would be super interesting, I think, for a lot of people to hear more about. But before that, let me welcome you here, Fredrik Stockman. I know you have a very interesting company now. You're the founder of Version and Lens, etc. But let me, before we go into that, hear more about you. How would you describe yourself? What's your passion and interests before founding Version Lens?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been, ever since I can remember, a fan of building experiences and something that other people can enjoy. And in the beginning, that was done through music for me. I was a classical, choir boy that used to sing in choirs, and I enjoy that a lot.
Another music fan.
We're keeping tabs. We're having some sort of statistical model of how many data AI nerds or VC people, or in this space, is also music oriented, and it's
it's very annoying for me because both Henrik is very good at music, Goran the producer is, Kirill here is as well. I'm the only one that sucks at both singing and playing instruments, and I wish it weren't the case, but I'm
you're the anomaly. This is what you're feeling, right, Anders? Back to you, Fredrik.
No, so that's where it began, and I definitely didn't understand what was really the thing that got me going at that time. But then I realized that I loved doing geeky stuff when I was about 12 years, maybe even younger. Started coding about that age. I really got a kick from showing what I've done, coding on my calculator in high school, and IRC bots and stuff like that.
Which calculator did you have?
TI 83.
I had the HP one, HP 48.
No, it was fun. So I made a game, and I went to music school at high school, so I made an application to kind of do the music theory part, and I asked my music teacher if I could bring my calculator to the music theory test.
And they didn't know what they were.
No, exactly. It was like, yeah, sure. What are you going to use it for? So I had this app where, there's this bass tone and there's this chord, and the test was like, okay, which tones should there be in this chord? And I just had an answer in front of me and gave it to my class. So, and I tried to sell it for 5 kronor. It's both being cheap and it's cheap. But obviously it was no copyright thing, so it got spread out, and I was just happy. But the thing is that I got really excited about other people who got excited about what I've done.
So you see like an app or recipe for the calculator?
yeah, maybe. Probably not, yeah. So, and then I was into sports too. I think that's the 3 different subjects in my life have been sports, music, and tech.
And what sports?
Yeah. So I did a lot of tennis when I was younger, swam a lot, in high school I heard it from my teacher that my first teacher in high school told me, you think you're really good at sports, right? I was like, yeah, to be honest, I think so. And she was like, you're actually one of the worst team players in this class. and from that moment, I really, because I looked up to her so much that I really felt like I need to become a team player to impress her. So I did that. So I joined a lot of team sports, floor soccer, floorball, exactly, innebandy, volleyball, ice hockey, and a bunch of different sports. And then I was looking at it what about now? Do you think I'm a better team player? She was constantly not super happy with me, and then she left, and we got another teacher. So I never got a chance to impress her enough.
But it shaped you a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I think it would have been a much later bloomer in terms of team member.
She pointed it out to you.
Yeah, no.
In a sensitive age.
Yeah, and she did. It was a perfect push. I needed it because I was such a solo player. I thought the person who scores the most goals is the most valuable player.
But then you got into founding
exactly.
companies. How did that get started?
So I thought quite early that I really wanted to start something from the ground, and the way to do that is through companies. I think I'm definitely a product person that really, really loves that part, and then the best way to get it out there, I think, is through companies, at least in my world. And you could do open source too, but it wasn't really a big thing when I got started. So I think 13 years ago, I started the first company together with 3 other people, and that was around the time when apps were a big thing. So people are really looking around for what to download, and that's not the case anymore. People are looking around for what to delete rather. And then we built an app that gave people free stuff. And in change, like you got food or drinks or whatever at 7-Eleven and these kind of stores. And in change for that, you instead of paying with money, you paid with 10 answers on 10 questions. So it was essentially a market research company. So in terms of user growth, it was a success. In terms of business, it was not. But it was a huge learning.
But when you did this, when you went that route, would you say that the entrepreneur role was popular? Because I remember I'm born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, started working in the 90s, and then everybody wanted to be a management consultant, you know.
Not everyone.
Not everyone, but I'm joking, right?
Yeah.
So like you there was a path, right? But I think that has completely changed somewhere down the path here.
Yeah.
Would you say you were early into, I want to build a company and be an entrepreneur? Because when I hear my kids now, that is way up on the discussion, but it was not for me in the 90s.
No.
How would you place yourself? Were you an outlier wanting to be an entrepreneur or going that route, or was it quite common?
I think we were just about the time when it was like socially accepted but not popular.
Good answer.
So before it was like awkward, like do you really want to risk everything you have for this? How are you going to do it and so on? After when we started, maybe 2013, 14, that's when we were actually in SSC Business Lab, which is an incubator for startups that has some type of connection to SSC Business School. And my memory, I don't know if it's correct, it was that it wasn't super hard to get in there. And I think the number of applications they get now has drastically increased over the last, 10 years.
Because I think if you talk about Generation Z or whatever, I think it's a drastic different view around if you're 18. My son is turning 18 this year. I think they are way different in understanding and thinking and dreaming than I was in the 90s.
Okay, so just because I have a point later speaking about how to really get started founding a company, etc. But if we speak about education, I think you did take some degree, right?
Yeah, I mean I didn't finish it, which is a sorrow for my mother, but I'm happy for it because I found some really, really good people to found the first company with. Yeah. So I was at KTH. Yes. Yeah.
So how would you advise someone today, given your experience now? Do you think it's worth taking the degree, or should you just go for founding companies as soon as you can? Or
I mean, it's probably quite individual. For me personally, I think what I got out of it was really getting to know the people that I now still am friends with. And the classes were more like interesting subjects that I could have read on the spare time or on my spare time too, which I probably wouldn't. So I forced myself into reading them in school. But I haven't really used too much of it. Rather, like last week I've used some of my linear algebra, but not like it's like once a year that I use something that I learned in school. But if you go to these like more niche schools, obviously if you become a doctor and you want to become some AI company in the medical space, then it's probably a good idea to do. But and I don't want to down talk any kind of academic educations, but it's so individual, I think.
How do you consider yourself when recruiting people? How much do you look at the degree they have and other competences they may have?
I think if you've completed a degree or like you've done well in school somehow, somewhere, you've proven that you can achieve something that if you set up a goal, you can probably achieve it. I've proven that I can't in that aspect. But that's something that I do respect, of course. But it doesn't really mean that you're going to be the best fit for us, I think. But it could be an indicator that I'm interested in. But it could also be super interested in hearing why you dropped out. Could be a good argument for that too. So I think the kind of the expense you take for like 4 years to get a degree is quite high. Yeah. So the alternative cost or like the opportunity that you could get instead could.
So from a recruitment point of view, you take it into account, but ultimately you want to figure out if the person has the right cultural fit and if it competence fit and really if they have done the real hardcore coding needed, they can show it.
And personally, I care a lot more about if they've done stuff on their free time rather if they went to school.
Because then you see what they're passionate about.
Yeah, they choose to, when they can watch Netflix or do whatever they want, they actually
code.
They go home and code, or they do something interesting in that aspect. And if that's something relevant for us.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so we reached out to a few GitHub contributors that do things in the space that we are interested in.
And has that worked out well?
We haven't recruited one of them yet, but it's worked out. I think the strategy is quite well functioning. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. What about, I think you said something where academia has a super important point, is the network. And you said it like, if you look back, you didn't take your degree, but you have friends and network for life. So that is not to be played with, in my opinion. So there's a point to signing up for a course. There's a point to go there and be there, and then you might go down one path, but there's value regardless if you finish it of that environment.
Yeah, definitely, because you commit to something large together, and if you do that for several years, that's kind of an environment that you won't really find in many other places. Maybe if you do your military service, or if you go to, I don't know. Yeah,
I'd like to just add, I think still we should motivate people, I think, to finish their degree. They will have so much easier time finding a job than people
100%.
that don't, right?
So I'm speaking only from the aspect of being, I think, for me it was being a programmer, and that was also during the times when it was incredibly easy to get a job as a programmer.
Yeah.
So today I would, really.
I mean, like, and just so people don't misunderstand us. You go here, and then some people go into the entrepreneurial path, but if you want to go into the more enterprise path, I think it's you have to have it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So if you are planning to be an intrapreneur, if you're planning to work with data and AI under the umbrella of Scania or Vattenfall or something like that, I think then...
If you want to have a safety net, I mean, it's really good to have a degree.
Yeah.
Right.
And
but it's just interesting to hear the different perspectives on what's the value of the education.
And I think even for programmers, it's a different thing now, because I hear a lot of friends that don't have such an easy time finding a job now as a developer. Yeah. And 10 years back, it was like, you could say that I've looked at, I don't know, Code Academy for 10 days, and people like jumping on you, giving you high salary.
To be frank, I mean, a lot of companies simply have a requirement on people finishing the degree to be even be considered. So I mean, it does open up more for a number of jobs.
Yeah.
But okay, cool. Should we move more into version lens, perhaps? If you were to speak a bit more, how did you come up with the idea? When did it get started? How did you really come to the Eureka moment, so to speak, when you figured out this is something I want to really invest in?
Yeah. So I mean, super shortly, what Versionless does, which will then answer your question too, I think, is that we are helping product managers to offload their insane burden to do a lot of tasks and roles with a co-pilot that sends them alerts and helps them.
So
but basically,
AI co-pilot.
I can tell you,
co-pilot for product management.
Exactly. So
software product management or any product management?
For product managers. So yeah, exactly. So specifically, it could be that we send an alert about a developer being blocked by a designer who we don't think is likely to be done on time for the front-end developer to actually start working on their task. And you can look at all the data around in the system, in Jira, whatever you have, in Slack, and see indicators that, okay, the designer has an event tomorrow that they didn't plan until just recently. That will probably push their tasks, and then if you predict this, it will lead to the front end not being able to start. So then we can reach out in advance. A perfect product manager would be able to do this if they constantly read all the data and gave you, like, basically were on top of all the data all the time, but it's constantly moving, a lot of different tasks and so on.
So it's helping PMs become more proactive in some sense to take action, before it's too late.
And the data is there if it's diligently entered and if you're diligently analyzing it.
That's a really, really good point. So I think it's mostly, what we're doing is mostly suitable for companies that tend to document a little bit better than maybe some. And those companies tend to be people or companies with remote developers, because then you have to communicate asynchronously and write things down. But basically how we came up with the idea was because the first co-founder, one of those, we were four in that company. The first one of them was Pascal. And we've been founding companies together all the way along since then. We have never really separated, which I'm super happy with. It's like a really good relationship.
So you have some founding friends.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, from free will, obviously, we're in a free land, country. So we chose to just join every time we had a new opportunity. So we asked ourselves, like, do we want to do this together? Yeah, sure. And really no strings attached. If you don't want to do something else, like, feel free to. But we always chose to work together. So what we found building a bunch of different companies and helping others do the same was that when it comes to product and tech and the rest of the company, like commercial, marketing, and HR and so on, you tend to talk about product and tech as them, or if you are a developer, then you talk about the others as them. And then going back to the sports background that I have, I mean, if I was in a team playing volleyball or whatever, you 6 people on the court, and talking about the others as them and us as like in the back as us, like that'd be incredible. Like, the coach would kick me out immediately.
Yeah.
But why are you not kicking out these people that do the same in product companies? Because you can't. And it's a cultural thing, but the culture comes from, I think, the fact that it's so hard to understand what product people and tech people are really doing, because the transparency is really not there, I think. So we felt really frustrated that, like, why are people talking about us and them all the time, whereas we don't think it's constructive.
Did you get this kind of experience from some of your previous companies, or where did you come up to these kind of insights?
I think to some degree I felt it in every single context I've been in, even in the best places where I really wished I could reimagine it, and like kind of be there again. So it sure has been in places where I really love being, but I think it's really not unlocked the potential. When you have this us and them culture, to some extent, it doesn't unlock the full potential. And that starts when you're like 4 or 5 people. Before that, then maybe it's still us.
And can you imagine then how this problem looks like if you go to a large enterprise?
Oh, yeah.
Where I've been constantly fighting this topic, and where we, over and over again, how do we create the autonomous team, cross-disciplinary, that then can have mastery and information, obviously, and having and sharing the same goals and understanding these things becomes super critical.
And if you were to describe, once you come up with the idea, we have some idea how to help product managers in some sense. What did you concretely do? Did you start, coding in some way, build some prototype? Did you do some pitch deck? Did you approach investors very early on? Can you just elaborate a bit? What did you do when you had decided that let's go for it in some sense?
Yeah, so we were moving around a little bit. When we left the previous company, we knew we wanted to help product people because we love building products and we want to unlock that feeling for more people. So we looked at ourselves like, what is it that would potentially stop other people from being product builders or not the best product builders that they could be? And we had a bunch of different ideas on how to do that. And you see some companies popping up in that space that we thought of today. But basically the first thing what we felt was like, okay, the communication is an issue. So one thing, speaking of us and them, was that we felt like sharing screenshots is one very tangible problem that causes a lot of friction. Because I ask for feedback, I send a screenshot instead of the actual product, because it's such a hassle to set up the entire product online and share it with you. So then we felt like, okay, let's build a product which makes it equally easy to share the product as it is to share a screenshot. So we did that, launched it a year and 2 months ago, January 2020.
What do you mean share a product?
So a developer can either like take a screenshot on their browser if they're building a web product, for example, and share it on Slack and ask like, what do you think? Do you have any feedback? And then instead we felt like as a developer, I'm committing all the time. I'm writing text on what I've done in terms of code. So what if I just added one word, which is maybe a new version? And we as a product company have hooked up the system. So we listen to your commits and then we build an entire copy of your system and deploy that and say it to you 5 minutes later, like now there's a running product that you can share with your team members. And then they could do that equally as it is to share a screenshot, because they only had to write one word. and then we shared it on Slack. So that was a product that we felt like this is a problem. Like I was 100% sure that this is going to fly to the moon and back. And then we launched it. It had some interest and it was appreciated amongst the companies, but the messaging was quite hard to get across. Like you had a follow-up question here, like you did, and that was pretty much the same experience we had when we tried to sell it. So we realized that we had to increase the pricing point to quite high, like enterprise level, and start talking one-on-one to customers. And I really want to build a company that could grow infinitely big, because I want to make the biggest possible impact, not just to the enterprise companies that can afford paying for it.
And you don't want to then have a very long sales cycle. You want something that is super intuitive, that you can basically sell digitally.
Yeah.
People can get it.
So we managed to sell it when we talk to people, but we didn't manage to sell it by just sending you a landing page to like explain it. That was super, super frustrating, and I wanted to fix that. And then we looked at ourselves like, what can we do? Can we decrease the price? What is it? And we felt like this is a problem that is not easy enough to communicate. So we probably either had to solve that, which we didn't have a solution to, or find a better product to build. So we pretty much scrapped that idea. We still have customers on it, but we don't invest in that product anymore. We make sure that it runs and the customers are happy, but not more than that. And that was around the time, pretty much a year ago, when they released the ChatGPT API. And pretty much like a lot of other companies, we felt like, okay, we can probably utilize this in some way or another. It was obviously very impressive. And then again, looking at how can you make sure that you build a product more efficiently, and the product manager is the interface between business and product. Like that is the person in between, like everything.
Yes, you switched from the old product, but you had still the same core idea, but you switched to using ChatGPT and some kind of co-pilot in some sense.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, can you describe what does the co-pilot really do?
Yeah, so fast forward to say around this fall, we had mumbled around, or I walked around a little bit and tried to figure things out and what to do exactly. And then we talked to a bunch of product managers about what they feel their largest problems are. And that is essentially that they have, according to a PhD researcher, they have 122 activities to do. So one single person has 122 responsibilities, which is insane. So I read them through and I was like, this at the time that information wasn't available, but now it is. But when you read it through, it makes sense. It's everything from some legal stuff regarding the product to sales, packaging, maintenance, and basically what we learned was like, this is way too much to do for one person. So how do we make sure with the least effort possible to make the biggest possible impact? And then there are two phases, you could say, for a product manager, or two kind of subjects that they work on. One is strategy and one is execution. And when it comes to what they actually spend time on in their daily work, it's about half their time is spent on firefighting, which is just fixing problems that just appeared the last day or two. So then we felt like, okay, we probably need to focus on making sure that they firefight a little less and like lift their perspective and actually focus on what makes sense. So you could say that firefighting is a symptom of being reactive instead of proactive. So then we asked ourselves, how can you make sure that they are proactive? And then we started looking at, okay, we can crunch a lot of data, read their backlog, their Jira, Trello, whatever they have, Slack, calendars, and make sense out of that to predict potential issues before they actually happen, to make them proactive instead of reactive. So then we went into which are the most appreciated alerts. We call them alerts, these kind of notifications, proactive notifications. Which are the most appreciated that we could come up with and think of. And one of them was that if there is a slow-moving ticket, for example, something that just drags out and take longer than you expected, the PM tends to want to know that. Because they have so many things to think of, and that's maybe one of the things that you don't really, it's kind of a hidden thing that just goes on for a while, and then you maybe have another ticket that they should work on instead.
And you want the stuff dragging out is probably because there's a blocker of some kind. So you actually want to know about it super early.
Exactly.
Because it's not going to happen. Then you can work and remove the blocker and be the PM you should be.
Exactly.
Instead of having that blocker blow up in your face.
Yeah. So you're spot on. So we looked at how can we find these blockers that are blocking productivity, because you could say that execution is a function of direction, focus, and speed. So that's the productivity. So how do we make sure that you're both fast and focused? And one of them is making sure that you don't have blockers and trying to figure out these blockers before they happen.
The blockers is actually one of the easiest ones to figure out with data.
Yeah.
Because you have the thread early.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you have a look at it. Is it a real blocker or not? So it makes total sense to me.
Yeah. So that's one of the things we started on, and then we try to use LLMs, different type of methods, not only like prompt engineering, but using LLMs as one important tool in the kind of setup of tools to solve these problems. And then we started using them ourselves.
The LLM angle is to get a more intuitive user interface to prompt or to discuss, to have a co-pilot you can discuss with, or what's the LLM angle here?
So you can say that all this data that a product manager has is unstructured. Like, sure, technically it's structured with a relation to database, but like in reality, it feels quite unstructured.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And there's a comment somewhere in a ticket that's actually really important that says like, I will not be able to do this because of that.
But it's buried.
Exactly. So it's buried in somewhere, and the PM maybe doesn't read it on time, and then you figure out in the next stand-up or the next retro or whatever it is. So all these meetings, I think many of these meetings are a symptom of the fact that you just need to sync data all the time. And AI, LLMs, and classical technology is really good at like, okay, we have a bunch of data, let's structure it up semantically. Like let's try to connect the data, the dots, and make sure that we try to see the trends and predict what could happen in terms of productivity and speed. So taking all the data from Slack and tasks and code and so on, you can get a pretty big and good picture of what's going on and predict potential issues.
And then you send some kind of alert somehow through Slack or something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we really try to be where the user is, and that's one big learning for us. We started off with web interface. I don't know, looking back, it feels like the dumbest thing. Why would someone go to a website to use a product like this? We obviously need to be where you are. So Slack and Teams and email. Like classical. I would even appreciate a call if someone just let me know, like there's a developer waiting to do something. If they called me, I would be appreciating it. So the interface is secondary. The actual data is really, really primary.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, it sounds certainly like a very useful tool, to be sure. But can you perhaps give some example? Have you tried this out on some real customers, perhaps?
Yeah.
Can you give some example if you were to be really concrete on this is how we help the specific customer in some way?
I mean, so we currently have two different products. One is the alerts that I talked about, and another one is a very simple product that we started off building, which is a tool that clarifies tasks. So instead of talking to a human about, okay, what do you mean by login is broken? You can talk to a bot, or a bot talks to you, asks you follow-up questions on that. So that's a Slack bot that we have, which just figures out like, oh, there's a question here or some feedback, and then the bot asks you a couple of questions to clarify it, and then saves it to the ticket system.
Does it speak to the PM or to the engineer writing the ticket, so to speak?
So it's up to the customer. Most of the time, we are a bot in your product or a feedback channel. So we semantically figure out that this question that someone had is related to a ticket that exists. Then we could send a link to that ticket. Or this question is about a ticket that doesn't exist, then we might want to create it. But we have a few follow-up questions on it to make sure that it doesn't sound like the worst bug in history, but it's actually just like a thing in development. So speaking of an example in real life, that exact example happened where someone wrote like, the login is broken. And looking back, it almost makes people laugh, because a lot of people, I think, can recognize like such a like wide definition of a problem, and it sounds like super important to fix, but the bot came in and asked a couple of questions. When did it happen? Where did it happen? And the answer was that it happened in development, the latest brand or latest kind of version of the development environment, and only for Google login, when the user didn't do what was expected, essentially. So it was an important thing to fix, but instead of like throwing 5 people on the problem, trying to run and fix it in production, we could help them understand that this is a thing that's isolated in development, and the developer that actually caused it was aware of the problem. It was just that someone got into the dev environment and tested it when the developer didn't intend it to be tested.
So it clarifies some ambiguous kind of tickets.
Yeah, exactly.
In some way.
So the other product that I'm personally even more excited about, which is the alerts. One example is that we basically let someone know that this is a slow-moving ticket. We can't really see why it is slow-moving. So we basically, what the product does is that it reaches out to the developer asking, do you have any additional information you want to share about why this is taking time? And then we could figure out a blocker, like you mentioned. I have a blocker, and then we could let the PM know instantly that this is a blocker. And people are people, humans are humans. So that developer ideally would have reached out to the PM right away. But when we talked to them about this, I asked them, like, how were you planning to fix this? And the plan was to talk about it during the next stand-up. But then there would have been quite a lot of wasted time, to be honest.
But it's interesting because this is semantics, and this is super important, because in one way you call it an alert, but what you're actually doing with the Copilot and an agent is you are using something more like it's an autonomous agent. We see that it's slow. We are reaching out. We are collecting more information, and we are sending it to someone. So it's a little bit more than just one simple task and alert.
Yeah.
That's the interesting topic now, going into more autonomous agents.
Yeah.
Now we're starting to see this, that actually you don't want the alert, you want a 3-step process to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what we're solving right now.
Yeah, and an analogy that we use is that we want to be a junior PM.
Yeah.
And if I employ a junior PM, or if I am the junior PM joining your company, I wouldn't ask you to use my tools and be in my kind of corner, and everything would be under my conditions. But I would do, like you said, I would adapt to your workflow and reach out to the developer asking, why do you think this is taking time, in a nice way, getting the right information, and to the senior person, tell them the complete picture. Like, this is what I figured out. I didn't get an answer that satisfied me, so I'm letting you know here.
But I think this is super profound, because this is where we're at in 2024. If you send an alert, that's BI. That's 2017, right? So in 5 years, what you can do and how you can really, I don't want BI. I want an action.
Yeah.
I want something to happen.
Yeah.
And it's actually not, if you think about it, you have now structures, steps, that is sort of action-oriented rather than intelligence-oriented.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you started to measure in some way the potential impact? Can you have some KPIs that you can measure in?
Yeah, definitely. And that's a really important thing, because in the first idea that we had that we scrapped, it was really hard to explain what the actual hands-on value, how do I translate or transform this money that I give you into money that I save or earn. So what we do here is, I would say that some customers are more emotionally buying a product because it's amazing, and some are more rational, and most of them are probably a hybrid between them somehow. I tend to be more the rational buyer, I think, but I'm probably more emotional than I understand. But when I reach out to someone that wants a rational explanation, how do I get money back from this? I basically explain, like, okay, so if someone is blocked for 4 hours, or like unproductive for 4 hours, say that they're getting a wage at $50 per hour or something, then it's $200. And in reality, they're probably doing something, so they probably add a value of what you would have liked to pay $50 for. So you lost $150 for that specific event, them being unproductive in the afternoon. So then if we would have reached out to them instead and asked them about something that we have identified before it happened, we would have been able to, maybe with some overhead that we actually cost, but a minimum overhead, would have maybe saved $100 or $120 or something, just for that specific event. And then it's just a kind of a function of how many times do you think this happened, this kind of event, and how much do we actually, how many of them can we capture?
Have you been able to track it, for some real company to see how often it happens? Or?
I mean, we are really early on, so we are doing it, but on a very small scale. So I wouldn't say that we have kind of a statistical relevant data. But when we actually reach out, including to ourselves, I mean, this has made us more productive. it's really clear. Like every time we send an alert that has high quality, it saves about 1 to 4 hours of work.
I actually have some small data going in this direction, working with Tetra Pak and working with a data science team that is then has the idea not only to build a model or build a decision intelligence tool, but then to make that being adopted globally. And then you can imagine the whole sequence from idea to adoption in a local market like Peru. I'm joking about this. So you can 10x the speed by simply removing blockers of coordination and friction. If you think about all the different angles a PM needs to care about, which is not only about code anymore, but it's about I need to reach that user, I need to reach that stakeholder, I need that decision, I need to get that money right, I need legal to fix this shit, I need security to do their part. And so in the end, this is a compounding problem.
Yeah.
And we all have it. In the enterprise setting, why does things cost 20 million that should cost 2 million? It's about this.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And that connects to overhead. Like
it's overhead, and it's speed, time waste, and a lot of overhead.
Yeah,
a lot of cost. Because during what should have taken 2 months, take 2 years, you have a team costing. Period.
Exactly. Yeah. And that is more or less exactly what you said is the reason why we're doing what we're doing. I've been extremely frustrated by the overhead that I've experienced and be part of myself. So you add people that cause overhead, and then add more people because the overhead just got too large. And you're fixing the problem with the same problem.
And this problem is bigger in enterprise than in a proper tech startup
exactly,
or hyperscaler, I would argue.
If you were to go more about the tech solution, I think you mentioned already a bit how it works, but for people that are interested in the technology, so to speak, and please say so if you don't want to share any trade secrets, but in some kind of abstract way, how does it go about making suggestions, alerts, finding slow-moving tickets, etc.?
Yeah, so basically, what we're doing is if you look at the end result, which is an alert, what would a human done to get that alert? It would probably have read everything. You could think of what we're doing as a tireless junior developer that stayed up all night to crunch all the data, all the calendar events, everything that changed. It not only reads what happened, but also what changed. So the ticket system, Slack, Teams, whatever you have, code base, and
the Git logs, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, just like a junior PM or a human, if you give me access to all of this data and I have the time to crunch it, then I will do a better job. But I will be able to do somewhat a good job even with access only to the ticket system, for example. But there is an incentive to give more data because then the kind of alerts or the system becomes even better. That's what a human would have done. So if I would have done it, I had all night to do it. I would have read everything that's gone on in the code base, probably a lot of like work in progress commits that doesn't make any sense. I need to read the actual code to make sense out of it and translate that to a human readable explanation what it is and try to match that with the tickets that's going on. Is this actually the ticket that they are coding on? If they're not, then that's a potential alert too, because then it says like this ticket is in progress, but they're coding on something else.
You do send the code as well to the LLM and...
Yeah, we're not. If the commits are good enough, then we don't need to do that. But if we don't think that the commit is good enough, then we try to kind of create a commit message ourselves to, in a human readable way, explain what's going on and try to connect that to the ticket system.
I like this because the way I usually phrase what AI is good for and humans are potentially bad at, and vice versa, is that AI is really good at going through large amount of data, but does so rather superficially. But humans are really bad at going through a huge amount of data in an efficient way. And what you're saying right now is that if a human were to do this, then it would have to be up all night, reading through all the changes, the Slack messages, the Git logs, the code. And it's really hard for humans to do that. But an AI can do that rather well.
Yeah, exactly. And they will never complain that it's boring or whatever.
Yeah.
I would manage to do this once.
Yes.
And I'd probably be honestly motivated because I'm a little weird in that sense. I would be like, this is going to be a fun night and to some extent. But then if I did it the next night, and the next night, and the next night, I would just be like lazy and sloppy and be bored. But
can we be a little bit techy here? Because what you're talking about here now is step one is a lot of different types of data collection. So you have different types of data from different types of systems. Everything from a Git commit to a Slack comment. And you are feeding that into what? Into a RAG of some kind, into some sort of model that you then drive the...
we basically cache it first and then create semantic relationships between these entities. So this Slack comment that I read is vaguely connected to this Git commit, but it is connected.
Is that a graph?
Exactly. So
graph technology?
We're not using actively Neo4j or anything like that, because you can actually use, which is, maybe a bit geeky, but you can actually use a relational database as a graph database to some extent. Because essentially a graph database is just multiple many-to-many connections between everything that you have in your database. So if you let everything connect to everything, then it could be a relational database. Sure, it's not optimized, and there are a lot of queries and stuff.
It's a nested query, but
exactly, it's going to be expensive to do that. But they're also like in the early phase of a startup, it's about getting the job done. Exactly. Yeah. And for us, it's super important that we can read the data easily and understand it and play around with it and read about it.
How do you find the relationships then in the different pieces of?
So we basically have a data structure that we expect it to kind of be inputted into. So you could do the similarity to having like this protocol of like, this is how we want the data to be stored. And if it is stored in that way, then we can query it. So we make sure that all the data is stored in a specific format.
So predefined kind of form in some way?
Yeah, so we have a schema, like a graph-like schema.
So you have a schema where you basically know the most common type of source system. This is the Slack part of the schema. This is the Jira part of the schema. This is a Git.
I would say that the semantic part of it, like this is a human comment part of the schema. Like, so basically, this is someone talking about it, and talking means this for us. Whereas code has another type of relevance. Like this is the ultimate truth of what's going on. And the task should be the ultimate truth in an ideal world, but it's, I would say, quite often the second to best.
Code is code.
Code is code. Like code doesn't lie.
Exactly.
But ticket systems tend to, and Slack is just like a reflection of what's going on.
But this is interesting semantic problem, because then you need to balance.
Yeah.
What is the real truth versus what is the semi-truth?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think, speaking of that, I think it's important to acknowledge or like understand, or I think a lot of people understand that, but like the AI that we use is never going to be, we can't prove that it's correct. We can say that statistically very, very likely to be correct, because we have systems to make sure that we avoid false positives, and we rather send one alert too few rather than one too many.
Really? I thought the opposite actually.
Yeah, because I get like I
alert fatigue.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, I get a lot of alerts for say cost alerts on AWS every day, and now I'm like, okay, there's a cost alert. I honestly don't read them every day, even though I should. I should modify the system so it doesn't send me alerts every day. That's just a factor or a function or a consequence.
So, and I think from a behavioral change point of view, you really want people to wake up to whatever alerts you send them.
Exactly. So if I have a junior PM who's like constantly bothering me, I'd be like, fantastic, you're super social and I like you in that aspect. But exactly. But please, just reach out to me if it's super important. Maybe I self-censored and like don't reach out to you, even though I think there might be something going on here. But the time that I'm reaching out, I'm confident that there's something. That's what we want to do to you too.
So here then you have a schema, you have a collection mechanism, and I assume you put a lot of thought into these relationships and this sort of semantics, so to speak. What happens next? Where does it go after that?
So then you can say that what we're doing, every type of alert that we have is a separate job. So going back to the analogy of a human, or a management consultant for that matter, I could be like, I'm looking for this type of analytics or this type of insight. And then I'm just crunching all the data to find that insight. So what we're doing technically is that we're formulating an alert, in our case, as a workflow. So first you do this, then you do this, and then you query the data like this, and then you formulate like this, and a prompt chain happens, and then whatever happens. Then if the result is like, this is actually something, then we send an alert. Practically what we do is we look at the data and try to get the data that's relevant for this type of alert. And then through some prompt training, maybe adding some, if we're still unsure, we maybe go back to the data source and try to find additional data that we need for us to be sure that it's either a true positive or false positive. Then if it's only a true positive, then we actually send the alert.
But have you been able to sort of set up these workflows, like alert workflows, like templates, like generic ones, or is it something you need to sort of configure to set together with the client?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a really good question. So basically, I would say that we're suited for a type of company that builds a digital product, most of the time a web product. And that's where we are really well functioning. But if you're building an app, for example, an iOS or Android app, we are not as suitable because we have focused the system to be really good at.
Your template stack is very geared to a certain type of problem is pretty predictable because we know how you build.
Because then we can generalize it.
You can generalize it, and you could probably do a couple of different templates. So this is an Android product manager template.
Exactly.
This is a web application React template.
Exactly.
Something like this, right?
Exactly. So, for example, if you think, again, as a human, and I'm a junior PM, and I've been a junior PM in a web SaaS company before, then I'm probably suitable to be, if I'm good at that, I'm probably going to be good in another SaaS web company too. But if I'm going to say the native team of Spotify's native app for Mac OS, for example, I may not know about the internals of how things are going and the workflow and the way of deploying and so on.
Potentially, this is just how long is a piece of string until you get more and more recipes.
Yeah.
Okay, before we leave the topic about the tech solution, I'd just like to hear a bit more. I mean, in the end, you have to generate some prompts to send to the chatbot or to ChatGPT. How do you go about generating the prompt? Do you use some kind of framework for it, like LMQL or something, or do you generate the prompt yourself, or do you have any special tricks or something to generate the actual prompt?
I mean, we do a lot of handcrafted things, and looking forward, I don't think we're going to do that in the future. But I mean, we were in a super young space. Sure, lang chains to some extent, but the prompts are handcrafted, and changing one single word in the prompt can have a huge impact.
Right.
That's what we do. It's a lot of handcrafting, and there are really no best practices that I know of yet.
But this is so exciting because we are so early stages in all this, and we are sort of trial and error figuring these frameworks out. Could we imagine some frameworks that could help here in what they are doing? Are there frameworks that suits this?
Sure they are, but have you heard about LMQL and these kind of things that helps you generate?
I haven't played around with it myself. Yeah, have you?
Yeah, partly. But I mean, it can be hard sometimes to know how to generate prompts, but it's I think I made a mistake like 2 years ago. I got the question, do you think prompt engineering will ever be a job role? I said no, because I think in the beginning, yes, but at the end, the model will be so intelligent it won't be required to have special prompt engineering skills.
Yeah, exactly.
But at least still today we do, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You really do. I mean, have you changed your mind, or we don't know this?
I just pushed it forward, perhaps. I think there still will be a point when you don't need to have a special prompt engineering skills, but you certainly do today. Right?
Yeah, but today I think there's no way getting around in your startup case. There's nothing out of the box that will fit this immediately. So even if you can use a framework, there is some prompt engineering going on in order to use the framework even, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Interesting question.
I think what we do instead is that we're reading a lot about what other people are doing and the research going on and open source projects and so on, try to look at what they're proposing and the learnings that people have, and then cherry pick the things that we like that suits us the best.
Have you tried different models? I guess GPT-4 is the top one, but have you tried and experimented with other ones?
Yeah, we have tried them, and to be honest, not gotten as impressed as we have become with GPT-4. But we'll say Claude 2 and things like that.
Yeah, we'll see that soon.
Exactly.
Claude 3.
Claude 3 now.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
yeah, exactly.
Oh, we have
exactly.
news. We have news segment. We need to mention that. But
and who knows about GPT 4.5 Turbo that they you probably saw the maybe leaked things.
Maybe a stupid question here because I don't really understand the tech. But Is the topic of token window important for you, and is there any type of RAG type thing you need to do, like when you're collecting data, how you in the prompt also giving a lot of data? Is that a key part of your solution as well, or how does this part work?
I mean, we've seen a strong correlation. Maybe it's because the way we use the prompt chains is behaving like this for us, but for us it's been that there's a strong correlation between the smaller the prompt is, the better the result becomes, or the more predictive it becomes. So even if the ideal scenario would be that we could just dump the entire data set into a prompt and ask it a question about it,
that is not how it works.
It's just getting worse and worse. Not drastically worse. It's just that our expectations are very, very high on what we want back.
Yeah, but you're putting on effort for added value, and if you put in the effort, then it's no real added value.
Yeah,
I think also old models. I think actually GPT-4 is lagging here a bit behind. If you compare it to Gemini 1.5 or Claude 3, they have potentially 1 million token context window,
tokens,
and they have these kind of recall measures that says they're above 99% recall precision in these kind of huge window sizes, which I do not believe GPT-4 has.
No.
So
potentially it changes the game.
Potentially the new models that is not GPT-4, you could potentially just throw in a lot of data without thinking as much as you have today. Do you think so? Or?
I mean, though maybe sometime in the future, but I would imagine, like, still today, even if we have the ability to send a lot of data into one single prompt, we still choose the prompt chain, because the results that we get by, say, for example, when we ask a question to a user, we first come up with a question to ask through a prompt. Then we use another prompt to ask itself, do you think this question is good or not? If you don't think it's good, make a better one, or improve the one that you made. And we could basically package this into the same prompt. I mean, just having this kind of, this is the way we think you should reason. But today, prompt chaining seems to be a better way to do it. And sure, like, it's super hard to say what it's going to be like in the future. But I think since a lot of these work processes that we implement is workflows that you could argue is workflows that are curated by experts, then I wouldn't want the model which has a general opinion about, or general projection of how everyone is working with product development to be coming up with the way to think about and reason about things necessarily. So I think there's a value for experts to be the ones that define the workflow for quite a long time. But for kind of low-hanging fruit.
Interesting.
Yeah. But let's finalize the tech question by going to the last part. How do we understand the UX of this Copilot?
So for us, it's just that you would add a Slack bot to your Slack workspace or Teams.
Yeah. That's the most logical way that you have another Slack bot, right?
Yeah. And then we're silent until we think something is super important.
And this Slack bot will then reach out like any other member in a Slack team, like your junior PM would do, and he would, hey man, you have a...
Yeah, exactly, just like that. So we just say, hey man, we think that you have a blocker. The front-end developer will probably not.
And not overcomplicating as you said, the web application UX. Who would want to move?
Yeah, exactly.
No one wants to leave their workflow, right?
Yeah.
So where are they doing it? Is it Jira? Is it Slack? And now Slack, it seems to be, a Slack bot is the number one.
Exactly. And we want you to feel that when versions is writing to you, it's highly relevant, because there's obviously a bunch of emails and Slack users that you sometimes experience that when that person is writing, I'll wait a little bit. But you've faced people that...
so you want the bot not to be in the spam folder, but you want the bot to be in the CEO folder.
Yeah. And before we move to I've seen reaching for the button here, but before we move into the news section, you say product manager all the time, and I reacted a bit to that. Can you just say, do you differentiate between product owners and product managers? Or
I mean, that's another podcast almost. No, but product managers, first I thought I had the definition of it in my head, because I've been in small companies up to, say, 20 people most of the time, some exceptions. But then talking to people about this, I mean, some people call them product owners, producers in gaming companies like DICE. They call them engineering managers at Spotify. They call them whatever. Like, there's so many names for that. So a challenge for us is to say that, okay, we mean product managers, but we maybe mean engineering manager for your case and so on. But when we talk about a product manager, we mean someone who's responsible for setting the direction of the product, where we should go, and making sure that it happens. But a lot of companies have separated the strategy part and the execution part. To maybe the product owner is the one that decides what to do, but execution is done by someone else.
But you are targeting a bit more the strategic kind of person.
We're targeting the one that makes sure that the team is highly functional and fast.
Okay, so it's more the execution part.
Exactly. So if someone is slow,
product owner more. Or?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm still confused about what people mean when they say product owner and product manager.
This is a shout out to the whole community that this is a problem, right?
Exactly.
And even the conversation about how do you separate the strategic part from the operational part, and there is a lot of theory if this is good or bad and stuff like this. Yeah.
In my view, I mean, it would be fun to just hear if you agree. I mean, for me, engineering manager is one thing, product manager another, and product owner is a third. And for me, engineering manager is more the line manager, that you do have the line responsibility, the personal responsibility for.
Exactly.
Product owner, I would say, is the more person closer to the team that do have the execution responsibility, that do have to prioritize and plan the work for the team. Product manager is potentially having multiple teams a bit above. But I'm sure there are so many people that disagree with this kind of definition.
Yeah, but I think it's very clear that you've grown up in Spotify and you've grown up in a couple of places where this has been fairly well documented, I would argue. If I take the argument from, I give you an example from Scania. Then we have a huge problem that, first of all, product owner, super tricky. Are we talking product owner from an IT perspective, software? Are we talking product owner, product manager in relation to a physical engine, right? And all of a sudden this becomes super. So then we have in Scania, you have the same definition of highly different topics, right? This is a physical asset. This is something like this, and we're called product managers. And then we had I give an anecdote. In we were trying to explain or find the right wording for this in where I worked as an interim manager in Traton or Scania Financial Services, and then we wanted a very clear business-oriented product owner that was very much connected to the P&L and was connected to the real problem, the real business problem. But they had no technical competence. They had no product ownership competence in relation to building software or data. So we then defined, we call these guys business solution owner. And we had to invite, because we had to put the product owner that was a sort of the technical product owner in relation to them. So if you go into enterprise, this becomes a nightmare, especially if they have both software and physical product management, so to speak. Like
I can only imagine.
So it's an interesting one, but it's part of the problem.
Yeah.
That is hard, that we are speaking about things, using words, and they mean very different things.
We are conflating terms all the time, and that really makes it hard to communicate to people
what
they really mean. And I wish we could have a clearer terminology for all these terms.
And different industries have different names for it too.
Exactly.
So say
producer, right?
Yeah, that's producer in like King,
gaming,
Dice,
right?
Embark, these kind of companies. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's time for AI News, brought to you by AIAW Podcast.
Still love hearing that every time.
It's growing on me. The jingle is growing on me. Goran is doing a great job.
Yeah. Well, we usually have this kind of middle break of the podcast where each one of us can speak about some favorite news topic that happened in recent week. And we try to keep it short, but we always fail. But
it's
I think
fun.
It's fun.
And we had a very interesting week. There's so many small or big things to talk about.
Yeah. There is an obvious one connected to your very topic.
Let the guest go first, because I think the guest can go first.
Yeah, I think we all had that news when we entered the room.
Yeah.
So
please go ahead.
Please go ahead. You start.
I mean, I think a lot of these companies like us that have been building products on top of AI have been thinking of what if we build an AI developer or someone who's actually writing code, an agent. And there's a lot of initiatives. And I think the interesting news that came out, or like were more hands-on recently, and I think was yesterday, was the product called Devin, right?
Yes,
that
Devin.
Exactly.
The AI engineer.
Exactly. And I was really amazed by the way that they had packaged it and done it end to end in a quite developer-like, human developer-like manner. So they basically have a product that lets you tell the system what to do, and then it's going to behave pretty much like a developer. It has a terminal where it does what a developer would do in a terminal. It can actually run the product. It has a code editor, and if it, for example, gets a bug, then it will actually debug it in a human-like way. So the
web browser as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
web browser.
so let's go a little bit nerdy. So in Devin, it's sort of 3 or 4 different. It's editor, code editor. It's on sort of web browser. So it can do many things, right?
Yeah, and it's really good at reasoning, it seems, and breaking down a task, because that's one of the hardest things to do, to break down a somewhat complicated task into small step-by-step instructions.
And it seems like the company, which is unknown, at least I haven't heard, I think it's very new at least.
What's the name of the company?
Cognition, I think.
Cognition is the name of the company,
and they
right?
claim their focus is reasoning, just as you say.
Yeah.
So in some way they are, I haven't seen any details from a technical stack point of view, what they use. It could be GPT-4, it could be something else. I think they are, training something that can run all these tools in an efficient way.
Yeah.
But what blows you guys away with the demo? Because I can start. What blew me away is what we have said. Now we are at task level. Imagine when we can do. We can put an objective where it's a sequence of steps that makes several things in a controlled manner to an outcome. And I think we're looking at this now. We have this pod we talked about from RAG to autonomous agents with Jesper Fredriksson, and I think that's been one of the comments I've saw on the predictions for 2024-25 when we're going to see agents that is sort of doing a objective plan sequence of tasks.
Yeah.
And I think if the demo is not lying sort of thing, it's literally step by step figuring problems out and then getting into a blocker, fucking bad code, debugging that in order to then, that's super interesting.
I think we should explain a setup.
Yeah, please.
They have some really nice videos, like a large number of them, and one of the videos is simply saying, okay, we have some repo, you just give it a prompt, you basically link to the repo, and you ask it to run it, and it crashed in one case, I remember. It was some log of negative number or something that happened. It then goes in by itself to add like print statements inside the code in various places to understand, how the data is flowing through the code. Finds the error, fix it, remove the print statements, cleans up the code, and then have a working version of the code. However, I must say, when you're looking at these videos, which are published by the company, you can see a lot of interactions happening there. There is not like a fully automated setup at all.
Yeah.
It's a lot of prompts going in from the human, interacting with the agent all the time.
Yeah.
And you don't even see the time because it's sped up so much. So it could be a lot of like
it's impressive, but it's really hard to judge the inflation in the argument.
And you don't know how steered it really is by the human in this case.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And who knows how many attempts they took to get that video.
But I still think it has value because the prediction we made from RAGs to autonomous agents is playing out. And we are seeing substantial steps in this direction now, and now we can sort of how much is marketing fake and how much is real. But the trend is real. The trend is irrefutable.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm impressed, and I think it's a super interesting news, but I'm not sure it will go to production in any company soon, to be honest. But the step forward has been taken.
This is a step forward for RAGs, period.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw some quotes from a number of famous people. For one, from Fredrik Stockman, who is the Google engineer that draws Keras, etc., who actually is an anti-deep learning people from way back, like 20 years ago or 15 years ago.
Symbolic man, is he?
Yeah, well, he does have some romantic feeling for human brain, I think. But then also from Andrew Karpathy, you know, the famous person that was in Tesla and then in OpenAI, now he's gone private again. But if you take Fredrik Stockman, you know, he basically is trying to decrease the hype here, saying making software is not about, you know, code or writing code. It's the problem-solving aspect of it, and this is nothing that Devin can do at all. So he says, you know, it's like an infinitesimal kind of small part of the software engineer's job that Devin is doing. I think he's exaggerating here. I think it's more value that Devin is bringing that what he's claiming, but he's really trying to put it down a lot.
But I think what he's arguing to makes sense when we take your case here is the difference between the real product manager and the junior product manager you just got on the team, and where the junior product manager or the junior AI engineer is doing, you know, it's fucking work, right? And that is valuable. Of course, it's not the problem brilliance of the AI senior engineer, but it's still something that the senior AI engineer potentially needed to do. And in this sense, I get his point. I fully recognize his point, but I think you don't diminish the junior people in your team, please.
I mean, just having a weird stack trace of some error, and then, you know, you have to do the kind of very manual work in Googling this, asking whatever kind of chatbot today.
Even if you're senior, you end up doing the shitty job.
Kind of repetitive, some simple task at least, is something that can be automated. But then the more higher abstraction level task, the mental models, as he calls it, is much harder to automate.
And now we're talking about augmentation again.
It is.
So I think from my perspective is what I believe is going to be the next step is that you would build some product like Devin, but not promise to solve any problem, but it would try to solve whatever problem you're trying to solve right now and compete with you in the background. And when it think that is one, it will present a solution to you, say like, hey, I think I have a solution for you. And then you'll be like, okay, thanks, that's great. Then I can move on to the next problem. And then in the background, it's going to try to solve that problem, fail, and not say anything. So pretty much like our AI did too, which is like silent if it doesn't have anything to say. Don't trust it for anything, but it will let you know if it has a really good solution.
I like that view.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in your case, I mean, you're targeting the product managers or product owners, and in this case, they're targeting the software engineers, I guess, and they could run in the background silently, seeing, you probably have the code, now it's a weird error, probably should do this.
So imagine, I mean, like, you can put a couple of bots like this at work, or you can hire 10 people. I mean, like, of course, I mean, like we talked about the Klarna case, as a news last week, and they are claiming, you know, ridiculous amounts of hours they have saved on fairly mundane work, right? And it's the same. It's the same.
I mean, I think it's the same, you know, what Sam Altman and, you know, Satya Nadella and me as well are saying all the time, you know, AI will make you more productive. I think your AI
100%.
will make product managers so much more, and the team
100%,
more effective
100%.
and productive. And this
And as long as we don't overclaim it, but keep it to this is tremendous value. Tremendous value that you don't need to overinflate, I think.
If you just briefly take Andrei Karpathy's view on this, I think he did an awesome analogy for it, or a metaphor for it, and he compared it to the self-driving car. So he basically said the progression of going from a fully manual car to a fully automated car. You know, in the beginning, you know, human handled every aspect of the driving part, and then you have the AI to help you keep you in the lane, so to speak. And then it could also try to keep you in the right distance from the car ahead, and it can accelerate and brake, and then it can take turns suddenly, and suddenly, you know, it just incrementally it's taking over part of the driving job.
Evolutionary.
And finally it will be full self-driving.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it will be this kind of incremental improvement. And he says, you know, we are basically seeing the same in software engineering. You know, traditionally it was all manual work, every part of the engineering work.
Text,
and now
symbol.
you could have, you know, the Copilot, the old GitHub Copilot that, you know, could autocomplete, you know, the couple of next, you know, tokens in the code, and then perhaps you could have ChatGPT now writing complete chunks or parts of the code, and then this just keeps increasing, and you get more and more part of the job
so
being done.
And our prediction then from sort of tasks to plans, from RAG to autonomous agents, is evolving in front of our eyes. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Okay, I think, is that enough for that? I think that's a good news. It's an interesting one, right? And it fits really well with the topic today, of course.
Definitely.
But do we have another one? I have. I can start with a more. I don't know if it's boring, but I think we actually made the AI Act vote.
Yes, of course. Yeah,
so of course we cannot lose sight of that.
No.
But what does that mean? So we have had. I give it. Someone I followed on LinkedIn made beautiful explanations on what it actually takes. What are the steps to take a decision? Oh, the AI is done. We heard that 1 year ago. No, the first step is done. Now it goes to this process. But now it actually gone all the way into the voting in the parliament. And it was the vote was in the end fairly strong. It was like 504 and it was like it wasn't close. It was a clear vote.
And to be frank, it's been like a 3+ year process or something. And we had a number of different versions of them. It started in the Commission of EU.
Exactly.
They have a Council of EU. They had a different version. Then they had the Parliament that also produced a version that was very much more, how should we call it, defensive, if you call it that.
But that is not the vote.
No,
so
they will all produce their own
all part
version.
of the process. This is the process.
A trialogue of different, parts in the EU that produce their own version. But now they really come together and they, try to find a compromise of all of these versions and come up with a single version of the AI Act that is now actually decided upon.
So the major feat is this was a vote where the parliament was sitting. Do we put the green button, the red button, or the no vote button?
Now there is a single version and it's been decided on. So
and this is a big thing because now we can really think about, okay, this is what we now need to implement. My pet peeve has been, you know what, the legislation without a package on how to implement it is worthless. It's scary as fucking hell. My argument on LinkedIn has been like, don't say that you have innovation in mind if you don't have the legislation and the innovation package. If you don't make legislation smooth now, you will kill innovation. So I'm waiting to be right that this is all bullshit, that there is no innovative thought because there's no package, or I'm looking forward to heavy investment to streamline and automate and making following the legislation easy. Yeah. And that remains to be found.
What would you say the core of the act is? The main topics?
The core thing is, of course, the risk-based approach.
Yes.
So you have like the unacceptable risk, the high risk, the middle, the low, and then depending on the risk class, if you call it that, then there have different conditions that you have to comply with. So if it's unacceptable, then it's simply not allowed to do. So any kind of social scoring, for example, is disallowed. Then you have a lot of high-risk cases, and they claim the high-risk cases are like a small percentage of the use cases. I still wait to see, how any court case will rule on this. But then for the high risk, of course, they have really high compliance demands that you have to comply with, and including, moving it into a centralized database, explaining what you do, declaring what data you use to train it, and so many more things. And having human supervision for it, and it's a lot of compliance.
And the devil's in the detail here, right? Because this is what my point is with the package, that fosters innovation, that is trusted rather than just killing everything. Because the what is very tricky, and before you have case law, it's even the what is ambiguous. So what I'm proposing that you put a lot of investment in is to, okay, how will I go about when I want to be a startup or I want to be an enterprise and I want to be compliant with the act, what do I actually do step by step?
Yeah.
And how can I take that to something as smooth and seamless as possible as a co-pilot?
Yeah, 100%.
And I have seen very little around that in Europe if I compare to Biden's executive order, where he puts together a full package. It's not perfect, but it's sort of many pies in the chart that he's sort of covering, and I only see like we're covering the legal aspect part.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on now. There's a lot of things being opened. I think they open up. They have been sort of signaling that there will be a new sort of department or whatever they want to call it in the EU working on this, but it's still fairly vague.
Yeah.
You know, and now they need to really get their shit together.
Yeah.
Otherwise, gonna have a consultants and lawyers galore for the next couple of years.
Exactly.
That will be for sure anyway.
Yeah, but I my argument is that if someone should make money on this, it should be the EU. They should have a fucking department, and they should have good stuff, and they should have the legal counsel.
An AI lawyer will make a lot of money in the future.
But rather a EU AI lawyer than.
Should have an AI lawyer.
Yeah,
perhaps.
that's even better.
Yeah.
But
Could
anyway,
be the next startup for you.
Yeah, we have ideas here. We need to talk.
Co-pilot.
But okay, but we recognize it.
I'm not kidding here. I mean, imagine the first one to do a proper AI co-pilot for anyone that wants to comply with the AI Act. They will make.
They will make money.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at how many consultants there were around GDPR, which essentially should just be a playbook.
But I said, someone asked, what should Sweden invest in? And I said one of the easiest non-political conversations, Erik Slottner, if you listen to this, is basically make Sweden the best country in Europe to comply smoothly with the AI Act. Make the first AI Act co-pilot. Make it super digital, super simple.
Yeah.
You can load up your code. You can do all that stuff. Like a rag, whatever.
You really like the rag here. You use it all the time.
I don't know.
I mean, there's this
initiative.
I don't know if they still have it, the Hack for Sweden event, where like the incentive is to come up with new innovative stuff for.
But this is such a no-brainer.
Yeah, exactly. I think they should invest some of the efforts into
the country that cracks this in terms of making the digital very smooth co-pilot. Yeah. Will actually attract more capital.
They have the sandbox. It's supposed to do this, and every country should employ or implement their own sandbox. But the one that does it properly will truly help all the companies quickly get
and they will
compliance.
They will attract finance, venture capital. They will. You would want to start your startup in that country in Europe easily.
Awesome. Should we stop there? Unless Kiran, do you have any more or no?
No, maybe one more.
I think the time is flying away. We have so many more topics here. Or
what about
something?
We need to.
You want to do the figure
I promised Kirill here, who's the producer today. You need to talk about Figure 01 and OpenAI's robot video.
Yeah.
Can we show it even? Yeah. Show it. It's fun.
With cups and a plate, and you standing nearby with your hand on the table.
Great. Can I have something to eat?
Sure thing.
Now the impressive thing here is the speed of the movement and dexterity,
Great.
the precision that
Can you
you can actually move
explain
these
why
objects.
you did what you just did?
It's
while
much
you
better
pick up
than
the
I've seen
trash?
Optimus or any other robot,
Yeah.
or Boston Dynamics or whatever.
Yeah, and they made a very clear point
So I
that
gave
we are
you the
looking at
apple
something in real time.
Because it's the only.
So a lot of
item
times
I could
you've been
provide you
looking at
with
videos
from the
sped
table.
up
And
because
seeing the human there really should prove that.
Yeah.
Because the human is moving in normal speeds here, hopefully.
Great. So,
Unless it's a really good
based
actor.
on the scene right now, where do you think the dishes in front of you go next?
The dishes on the table, like that plate and cup, are likely to go into the drying rack next.
Great. Can you put them there?
Of course.
Yeah, so they've been super clear to say like there is no teleoperations. There is no one sitting with an AR.
It's not remotely
so-
controlled.
It's not remotely
autonomous.
controlled. It's
Yes.
machine learning based.
Yeah.
It's reinforcement. It's proper. It's built on understanding what is happening and then reasoning or understanding what they're saying.
Not
and
reinforcement learning, I don't think.
No.
But in any case, it's surprisingly, high precision and high speed, and more so that I've seen even the Tesla Optimus bot.
So we had. I thought we needed to show it because we had the Tesla Optimus. What is that? Number 3 or whatever it was. We showed. We showed it a couple of months.
It was a long time ago. We haven't seen an update from them for a long time. So it could
3
be
months.
on track.
3 months.
Yeah,
It was this year. It was 2 months
Decades
ago.
in AI.
Decades in AI.
But it is impressive that OpenAI is moving into the area of motorics as well, because it's so much easier actually to do AI in a digital space. But having to move into physical space and do the what was it that I think it was Boston Dynamics CEO who said the athletic space. So he compared like digital to athletic. And it is, we know that motorics and having motor control in a real physical space is so much harder than just, working in a virtual environment.
Yeah.
And this is then a partnership between OpenAI and a company called Figure. Yeah. But you said Figure is fairly new company as well.
Yeah, well,
I didn't know that.
I thought they haven't been public at least.
No.
They've probably been around for a number of years, but they haven't really been public about it.
And my point is a little bit like, so why are OpenAI doing this? And I think it's part of the whole topic. GPT was around for a long time. We needed ChatGPT to better for normal people understand the potential of what we can do. And once again, just by showcasing and moving into robotics, it becomes way more tangible where this is going.
Yeah. I think it's incredible to see.
It's cool.
But also looking back in 10 years, I think we'll laugh at it. Which is crazy, like the speed of evolution is going to be
5 years
crazy.
even.
But I find the most funny comment here is like, it was ages ago we had an update from Tesla. It was 2 months ago.
Yeah, exactly.
True.
Anyway, stop there.
Yeah. Okay. I think perhaps a continuation on the Devin topic as well, and then thinking more about what you do in version lens. How do you see the future of work with AI co-pilots? Potentially when it starts becoming more of a norm. Yeah. When you do have AI working and helping not only the engineers but the product managers, etc. What do you think the future will look like? If you just extrapolate like 3 months or 3 years, I don't know.
Which is decades, exactly.
Decades, we're talking decades.
Yeah.
AI decades.
No, I think,
dog years.
just like what we're seeing right now is very imperfect, like an AI that fails at a lot of things, but still super impressive compared to what we had a few years ago. So then I assume that in the near future we're going to see a lot of products where it's okay to fail to some extent, or it's okay if it's silent if it doesn't succeed. I wouldn't be fine with having, a self-driving car that occasionally drives correctly or sometimes wrong. So when you see these autonomous agents and these upcoming initiatives, I think it's super important to not promise too much, because then you maybe end up with, because no one knows really how true that video from Devin is. I just from the content that it produced, it seems quite good, and the kind of way of talking about it is very interesting. But to really have an agent that's delivering something of value, I think it's good. It's going to be super important that it's not promising too much. It's okay if there isn't a kind of a consensus about what's true and false, and then it comes down to delivering something in the space where maybe a human has to help out a little bit. So if you are building code, writing code, or writing text or something, a human probably finishes it, but it doesn't go to production or the end user before that.
But you say something here that actually gives pointers to how to invest and how to think about that, and which use cases we should focus on first, because AI autonomous agents is real already. But of course, you're not going to start with the most critical or dangerous cases. Yeah. Even if that's where they have their true potential, it's basically more smart to start where it doesn't have any.
And there's a lot of low-hanging fruit.
Low-hanging fruits.
Yeah, exactly. There's a ton of that. I mean, say Google Maps, for example, giving a route, they're probably used AI for ages on giving me a route on that. Like, I don't know what the perfect route is, but I'm fine with it, the route that gave me. And sometimes I'm like, why did you choose to go right here instead of left or whatever? But most of the it's great, and that's a good use case for an AI that's like quite often right. It's often enough right. And I also think that it's super important that it's going to be integrated into the tools that you have, because if it's actually going to be a co-pilot, I mean, or a colleague or whatever, like I don't want the colleague to ask me to go to another tool just because I have a colleague. There's a serious tool fatigue, so I really want to use like the few tools that I'm in love with. So,
but I love that comment, because, and I think to some degree even the whole BI industry went the wrong way here when they started to building BI tools, going in. You know, we're all using them, but it actually takes us out of our workflow to go to my whatever BI tool I have, and I think this is now being adjusted. So when we come to AI agents, we have learned from that mistake. Yeah. We shouldn't have reporting on the side or analytics on the side. We need to augment the workflow. Yeah. And that I think that's some profound topics here that you're mentioning actually. Yeah. That we've missed a little bit 5 years ago.
So if whatever I'm doing during my day, like I don't want to use another tool or change my pattern of behaving. I really want to keep that, but just at the right time getting a suggestion on what to do, or like, hey, watch out, there's a car coming to the left. And then I'm like saving my life thanks to an agent being on the side of my head or whatever.
Makes total sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to like look in an app and like, hey, there's a car to the left, and then I'll die.
But it's yourself. You even started with the web application and you thought, that is wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%.
Easy mistake to make, right? And the whole BI industry went down that path.
Yeah, and if you don't listen to how people want it, like users don't want to change their behavior more than ever, then I think you're going to be screwed.
And you used the word here, I think we've heard it before, tool fatigue. What is tool fatigue?
So, I mean, looking back at the like App Store in 2008, 9, 10 or whatever, people are super interested in downloading apps. The opposite is true now, like about adopting new tools. So I'm actively looking for which tools I can remove to optimize my workflow rather than adding new tools. And if I'm adding a new tool,
it needs to really make sense.
Yeah, it really needs to make sense, and it has to be integrated to the tool that I'm using and be really seamless and frictionless. So the tool fatigue is the tiredness of new tools and
new apps.
New apps.
But perhaps this kind of movement into more LLM-based future, where text is like a unified way of communicating between humans and perhaps applications in the future, could make it possible to, more quickly adapt to a new tool that comes up, and you don't have to learn how to use it really. You can just type, speak, or look at it, and you will use your human senses to interact with it.
Exactly.
I think so.
In a nice way.
I think so.
But then, if you think more about the potential future, and just try to be really philosophical here and speculate, what will be the competences that humans need to have? If you take the product manager, for example, role, I guess potentially you could start to be more creative, thinking, what happens if we move the application in this way? And what do you think? If you just were to go really crazy here and think like 5 years ahead, how will the...
To me, it's like the same as going back 5 years. It's all about motivation and why am I doing something? And in the future, it's more than ever, I think, going to be about why I'm doing something. Because right now I'm doing a lot of things because I have to, but I really, really want to offload it to someone. If I had money, I would probably pay someone to do it. But there is no like cheap enough option. But if you have enough money, then you can do what you really, really get motivated by. So the kind of accessibility for tools or the ability to switch away the things that you don't want to do is going to increase, I think.
And I guess you, as a human or as someone that owns a company, at least want to stay in control in some way. I think, if you remove the control aspect, it would be something that people would be a bit offended by. But if you still have the sense of control, and you can tell PM Copilot to say, just make sure to quickly let the team know as soon as something is going the wrong way, and I can trust it to do so, I can focus more on what I really want to control, which is that the product is the best one some other way, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like we were gonna always come down to what really matters to the person, and the product manager's role is gonna be more and more about motivating the team and making sure that everyone wants to work on the things that they're doing, and instead of being firefighting and spending tons of time on ad hoc calls, we can spend time on making sure that we motivate.
That's a really good point, because you spoke about that at the beginning. I mean, they spend 50% time with firefighting. And imagine what happens if that's 1% or 5%.
Yeah, exactly.
95% is now really about more strategic kind of thinking.
Yeah, and I'd be really surprised if they chose to go down to half-time working, because I really think that they want to, that there is more things to do. Yes. It's just that they actively choose to not do some things because they're firefighting.
Right.
But you're saying something now that another guest was talking about, I can't remember who it was, that I think it was said in a more abstract manner, but it is very well explained now by you. And this is a little bit like, the more AI we get to do the mundane stuff, the bigger the problems we can tackle.
Yeah.
And the bigger the problems we can tackle, I think it was said in relation to climate change or whatever. But if you take that down to the team again, and you take it down to the product manager role, is really, you want to tackle the bigger problems, but you're stuck with the firefighting.
Yeah, exactly.
Bullshit work many times that gets stuck somewhere, but if you don't put management attention on it, it's still stuck.
Yeah.
And this is, to me, we will be able to focus on the bigger topics, the bigger problems, the more interesting questions as the product manager.
100%. And I think that the fact that I can't deliver a full junior developer today to you today is super frustrating for me. I want to do it today, and in the future, in 5 years, I'll be able to do it, maybe not in a day, but in a month. But now it's going to take us more than a month. So I think like the vision is there. It's just a lot of mundane tasks, not necessarily mundane, but there is a lot of tasks that I have to do.
They're not mundane, they're really hard, but they are firefighting type. Reactive. Firefighting reactive, which they were unplanned blockers.
Yeah.
They need
you
attention.
can just look at how many projects that ran out of like whatever ETA you had when you estimated that it would be done. Like most of them, I imagine, being
most of them,
like taking longer than they expected.
But so to predict this into the future, I think it's a fairly safe prediction what you're making. I don't think this is so crazy. We don't need to go berserk, go crazy to 5 years ahead. See where the evolution is taking us. It's taking us away from reactive into proactive. I think that is a fairly safe bet. And the only way we can be more proactive is to work on the important stuff instead of the urgent stuff. Steve Covey wrote a book in the 80s, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and made a simple quadrant. What is not important, what is important, what is urgent, not urgent, and we identifying that if you want to move ahead, you need to stay on the important and urgent, and maybe sometimes not urgent but important stuff in order to unlock stuff. Yeah. And now we're stuck in the firefighting important, not urgent.
Yeah.
And we have a hard time prioritizing within this, and it's going to be, for me, you can take Stephen Covey's model and say, I want what is urgent and important. We do that. What is urgent but not important, I want the AI bot to do that. And and I can have more time for the important long-term stuff. I mean, it's super obvious.
Yeah. And imagine, just being a product manager and like getting a call from someone saying that I'm sick today, I'm not going to be able to make it today, I'll probably be there tomorrow. I'll have to redo so much of my plans today. And getting super down to details, like what is this person working on? How do I unblock this person and talk to everyone and fix that? And then at the same time, I should zoom out to see what is the vision of the product. Like it's such an extreme different thing. Like thinking about a task in Jira, 1, 2, 3, 4. This should be done by this person, but someone is sick and a customer is asking for this. At the same time, like where are we going as a company or as a product?
Yeah.
I think we can zoom out a lot more in the future and think about where are we going, why.
More abstract. Yeah.
Zooming out is I think a good term there.
Yes, better term.
It will be a better future for sure.
Yeah.
I'm thinking if we could switch gear a bit and perhaps moving bit more into what we actually started the discussion with, the funding and investments area. And it would be fun to hear, if you take for Version Lens, what's your plan for funding going forward? I'm not sure what you have, if you have any funding yet, or how do you envision scaling Version Lens going forward?
So I think, like, thanks to AI, a lot of things will happen, and we are cocky enough to believe that we're very suitable for building the product we're building. But we also are realistic about that. There are probably a lot of people around the world trying to solve similar issues. So there is a competition. We just don't see it yet. In terms of product managers, they don't have many tools right now. So we think there is an opportunity for us to build something incredibly good in the near year or so. We managed to get funding during the winter, and we're super happy to do that. It's, as we talked about,
seed funding, or
pre-seed. You could call it 1.5 million euros, and that basically is enabling us to scale up the team a little bit and come to a point where we have proven that there is a demand for a product that people actually appreciate, what you could call product market fit. And at that point, it's just faster and harder, you could say. There's no limit to how much I want to solve this problem. So there's also no limit in terms of how this is so incredibly important. It's a central role that enables every developer and designer to do their job, that enables the decision makers outside to understand what's going on. If we can give a tool to them that makes their job better, that will help the entire company. So we need to do that.
Because this has impact. The blast radius of getting this right is both operationally down into the nitty-gritty stuff, and is equally strategically visible up. Yeah, so it's one of those areas where if you get it right, it shows in both in all directions.
So a little bit like, I don't know if it's, an analogy is like, you can't really know others if you don't know yourself, you could argue. And the same thing for a product team, I would argue, like, you can't tell other people about your product team if you don't know your product team yourself. So what we're helping the product manager with right now is making sure that they have a fantastic picture of what's going on in the product team, make sure that it's smooth, aligned, and perfect. Then you can
coming back to the topic here, the funding and investment part. So you have an initial, you still call it a pre-seed of 1.5
I think that's maybe the upper limit of pre-seed.
Yeah. Okay. Do you see you're taking in more funding soon?
Not soon. We're privileged to have a runway to come to the next state. I wouldn't ask for anyone to invest in our company if I haven't proven anything new compared to the last time. If we are at the same point technically, or like proven in terms of what we proved, then we haven't done our job. So we need to prove something significant in this year, 2024.
What is that goal? What is the main proof you want?
I want your customers to love our product. If they don't, then I should ask myself, what did I not do well here? So if I manage to get people around me to feel that if Versionless takes the product, if they go bankrupt, I'll ship in money so they don't go bankrupt. That's my job, to make sure that people get sad if we go away.
It's like showing proven traction.
Traction is super important. So obviously building products, but I would argue the technical aspect of building a product, we are confident that we can technically build it. That's the easy part. But the hard part is making sure that we build a product that the market wants.
Market fit, adoption.
Exactly.
Moving up the adoption curves, crossing the chasm.
Yeah. So I want to be inside of everyone's head and understand what is the fundamental job that we're doing for you.
Yeah. I see you moving back to the
sorry.
all the time here, and I'm trying to.
Yeah, I get emotional.
I'm trying to also have listeners, that's interested in learning. How do you properly build up a company? What is the proper strategy for funding? Investments, and I guess at some point, you want to have the seed money, you want to have the proper, product market fit to say, and then you have a certain runway, you have a certain burn rate that you're operating at. Do you have any a runway that you're looking at right now?
Our job is right now. So basically, if you raise money before you have revenue, which we did to some extent, you could argue, but very little revenue, then the equation of when you're running out of money is just like you're more or less only going to have losses until you have revenue. So we are right now improving or increasing the revenue that we have to, which will buy us a longer runway. But the goal with it is not to last longer with the funding that we have right now, but it's to prove that people want to buy this product.
You're not aiming for break even now, right? Or are you?
I would never say no to it, but I would also argue that maybe we didn't invest enough in the product. Because if there's a huge need for the product, then we should build harder. So to some extent, it's great if we can be profitable by maybe hypothetically firing people, which God forbid would happen. But that would be a fantastic case if we could be profitable. And maybe I actively try to not be, just because I want to build the product that people scream for.
I mean, I guess it's a question about, you can go lean, I have some, side business, we go super lean, we're not really, hitting the drums trying to scale quickly. But I think for a lot of investors, they really want, if they are investing in them, to scale as quickly as you possibly can, and not even aiming for a break even potentially. But I guess you can think, in different spectrum.
100%. Here. I mean, I had a poster business back in the days that made a poster out of your Instagram pictures. I never had an intention to become a super rich person. That was a VC case. I just wanted to physically make something out of all the images that you're posting. So it's about what you want to build, I guess. And in that case, I made it manually. I made a poster for my sister, and I saw in her eyes how happy she was when she got the poster. So I was like, I want more people to be that happy. But I couldn't really figure out a way, and I didn't have the ambition to kind of scale that to something larger. But in this case, I feel that there are millions of product managers that actively suffer and burn out, that we're not saving their lives, but I think we're saving their roles, because a lot of people are quitting being a product manager because it's so tough. And I think that needs to be fixed, and that is not an easy or cheap problem to fix.
I think it's a super important and I think it's well worth investing the time you're doing. I think so many people and companies will make a huge value from it. But okay, if I understand you correctly, you will, if you were to make break even now, then good. But even if you were to come to some break even and you make some profit, wouldn't you still want to have another investment?
Yeah, I mean, we will definitely. I mean, the market is so big that we're addressing that we can't do it with the 7 people we're now. We cannot reach 1 million users or customers with 7 people. Maybe, I mean, we're probably hearing about the $1 billion one-person company that.
Yes,
that is an interesting thought.
That's a funny,
Exactly. An interesting thought, actually.
I was cool that you say that.
Potentially,
the first one-man unicorn.
Exactly, and they have a bet about it. So I haven't placed my bet. I haven't been asked, but
you think it's gonna? You think it can happen?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. And if you would ask me, do you think it's possible in a million years? Of course. And I think that humanity will be around in 1 million years. So sometime between now and 1 million years, I think it's going to be rather a few years rather than 1 million.
People that haven't heard about this, it sounds like we all three here have heard about it. But it's kind of a crazy story. And there is some bet that some Altman have made that there will be a point where a single person can make a unicorn, $1 billion worth company by himself without any other employees, and I guess then with the help of AI as co-pilot doing it.
Yeah. I mean, you built WhatsApp with how many were there? 10, 15, 20 people or something. That was $1 billion company without AI. So, I mean, someone will create a game like Flappy Birds or something, one person, and get everyone and get addicted.
Okay, so the next bet is the first 1 billion unicorn will be a game.
Yeah, I would believe so, to be honest. Maybe, but I don't think it's unlikely at least.
But let's go in. Okay, so let's take another add-on question to this. So so we are, when you're looking now at VC and investing in the runway, when do you start thinking about, okay, I need more money for the core product, and now I need more money to scale up operations, marketing. If I really want to go global, I need to have a huge marketing spend on advertising in all these, So how do you understand that journey? What is your learnings on when to spend on product, when to spend on marketing, and how you see it now?
Yeah, I think one thing that we were tested quite hard on during the fall when we raised money was, what are you going to use the money for? Like, why do you need this money? And if you don't really know what you're going to use it for, if you're saying like, I will spend a lot of money on marketing, like doing a campaign that's going to cost me €1 million or something, and you haven't proven that people want your product, then you're basically flaming money. And that doesn't sound like a good investment to me. But if you are like, okay, we have a product that people want, that are buying, we have a message on our kind of on the internet that we can convert from ads to a customer, more or less break even on every customer's acquisition, and the value from the customer is about the same. The acquisition cost and the value is about the same. Yeah, then maybe, okay, do you think you can increase this by spending more money on our marketing? Then maybe that's what we should raise money on. So if you know what you're going to use it for, then definitely I think it's a potentially good idea.
But what you said here, do you think that has changed? That we highlighted in the early part of the pod that the when and how you get money has changed a little bit. Would you say that what you're going to use the money for and how concrete and clear you need to be on that, we need this much money to take our product to this step. Then we need this much money in order to drive a sales and marketing operation. Then we need this much, has the due diligence in relation to what you're spending your money on, do you think that has grown up as well? As part of the different climate?
Generally, yes. But then I think there are definitely exceptions when you have a super experienced and proven team that has proven to build a lot of valuable businesses, then maybe the trust is already there.
The trust is there, okay.
So I think what investors need is trust for what we're spending money on will likely give us a good X amount of money back. And that trust comes from like having a trustworthy plan. Like what is the hands-on that you're going to do with it?
And the core topic becomes, we had John Bosch talking about, he made a beautiful quote, a T-shirt quote, nail it before you scale it. Yeah. So I like that idea that if you can't really articulate concretely for yourself what you're going to use the money for, are you really ready for VC capital versus I know quite clearly what I need to do with my customer, with my product, and now with my marketing.
Yeah, no, I think that's entirely true, and that comes down to like, okay, into every step, like, okay, I'm investing in a person that I want to work with. What does good and bad look like for that person? How do I ideally get money back from that person? And when I do bets on like, okay, not even a bet, like you could maybe just go to an office that you like being in. Like I think the money is paying back because people are going to be motivated. So some indirect and some direct values, but then scaling it up, you want to know what you're spending money on, I think. But to some extent, I don't think it's a must for every company, every case. And early on, the team is super important. So if you're raising a smaller amount of money, then maybe you don't need a super concrete plan. It's probably enough if you are a very good team. But if you're not an experienced and proven team, then maybe you need a better plan. So I think it's a kind of a balance.
Makes sense.
And the time is flying away here, but perhaps we spoke a lot about the funding and investment part once you have a company like yours. But if we look back and say that your next adventure now, and you want to create a new company, and someone is listening to this and say, I have this idea. How do I really get started? Can you give any advice for people that are having their great idea and they just don't know how to get started? Any like do's and don'ts that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about investments, and I would wait with getting other people involved until I feel very confident that this is really what I want to double down on. Because when you're alone, you can pivot and change your idea like after lunch if you want to do that. And even if you're doing it with maybe one or two colleagues, it's going to be much, much easier rather than talking to someone who invested in idea X and now you're talking about Y, and then that changes everything. So how I would do it practically is probably try to bootstrap and figure out what I want to do as a side project, or if I'm fortunate enough so I can do it full time, you're lucky. But realistically, maybe on the side, on the evenings, on weekends, try to figure something out that actually gets in someone's hands, that solves something that they're willing to commit a little bit of money to. Like, then you've proven that like someone is actually willing to put the money where the mouth is.
So there is a value in the bootstrapping ideas in the early. I mean, like, to really be able to be concrete enough. What is it that I'm doubling down on?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, there is a process to figure that out, and that you cannot avoid that process. Is my view.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, we pivoted a couple of times before we raised money, and I'm super happy we didn't raise money before we did.
Yeah.
So I think some people, I'm not saying everyone, but some people maybe see raising money as almost winning a lottery ticket, or a lottery, like just winning money. And I think, like, you need to understand that comes with a lot of responsibility, and also understanding that it's going to be harder to move the ship because the ship just got larger. But if you're like a small rib boat, then you're going to be really fast at just moving around, and now you're see the line.
One last angle to maybe finish this up. Have you ever considered, or do you have experience from other types of financing than VC? Or do you have any ideas? I mean, like, we had guests here from our capital, which is now called
Gillion, right?
Gillion. Like Henrik Landgren and the guys. So there are a couple of different avenues to raising capital.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you can go to a bank loan, you can go to Gillion, and you can maybe do it in a couple of different ways. Do you have any experience from other angles, or do you have any ideas of when is VC a good idea, when is it not a good idea?
Yeah.
Any do's and don'ts here?
Yeah, I mean, our first investor was CSN. That, like, when we started, we got student loans, and we used that for our company.
I thought you said CNN, but you said
CNN, exactly, just a small company.
CSN is the best VC.
So for any non-Swedish, that's the institution that gives students in Sweden money for either.
So you scam them that you're gonna do another course, right?
No, I did my courses, but I also did my company. So
you did your courses.
So it was a win-win.
So that's why you went to KTH.
Yeah, and I got to know my co-founder as well. But that was where we started, and then when we were like doubling down on the company, we in that first company. We basically set our salaries to a minimum, I think it was 0 for 18 months or something. Looking back, I don't know how we survived really. Like, it was from something that I don't know really. But at that point, we had a amazing CEO, Rasmus Wallander, that was really good at talking to some angels that wanted to invest in us. And I think partially they wanted to invest in him, because I would want to if he started a company today. So if you're fortunate enough to know some people that could invest as angels, and you are a person that they want to invest in, that's maybe a good start.
And you make a distinction between an angel investor and VC.
Yeah, because the angel investor is normally a person, or I guess always has to be an individual. Then the VC is an institutional, like it's a company investing in you. So the main difference in my experience is that the angel investor is going to be more personal. And I also feel that I'm talking to a person who doesn't have these rigid processes for how they invest in companies and run their investments and so on. So both in terms of the person you're talking to or the VC that you're talking to is going to be structurally quite different, I think. But you could potentially get some upsides from that personal investment from the angel, who may feel a stronger incentive to reach out to their network if they have a big one, to connect you to their customers, whereas a VC may see
you 1 in 100 in a portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, more like that, maybe, who knows. So to some extent, maybe you want to find an angel investor who you think could be a very good fit, that stand by you when shit hits the fan. Like, it's going to be, I guess what you really want to find is someone who you really want to talk to on a rainy day. In the beginning, it's going to be a honeymoon and things are going to look good.
I mean, I guess an investor, it shouldn't be only the person that brings you money.
Yeah.
It should be someone that helps you scale the company.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
open the doors and have the network and.
Yeah,
give
and just
some
today,
advice.
I mean,
Yeah.
our main investor or lead investor, People Ventures, a Danish VC, who I deeply appreciate the help from. I reached out to them today and asked them about a specific issue and how we hands-on can help, how they can help us with that. And the way they approach that is not by like, hey, you have a problem. Why do you have a problem? Like you should fix this. But rather, okay, I'll come to Stockholm on Tuesday or Wednesday and let's talk about it, have a session about it, and collect the people that could fix this. So I just feel super fortunate that that's the kind of relationship we have with them. And that gives me trust that when rainy days come, because they will come, that we will have a constructive relationship that we can go through. So pretty much like working with a colleague or partnering with someone in a love relationship. When partnering with someone who gives you money, it would be a pretty good idea to kind of get a sense of how it's going to look on when things don't go that well.
You should pick an investor as you pick a partner. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Awesome. Should we take the final one, perhaps?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Imagine now, Fredrik, that we have Devin going crazy and then actually increasing part by part to build the software. And simply we come to an AGI future. We come to a point where we actually have an AI system that is better than an average coworker, as Sam Altman called it, and perhaps even going further, saying we have ASI, artificial superintelligence, where the AI system is actually better than even all humans combined in some way. Then you can think, in two extreme scenarios here. One is the dystopian, nightmare. We have the Matrix, the Terminator, and the machines are trying to kill all the humans. That could be one future. And the other extreme would be the utopian version of it, where we live in a world of abundance and we have solved all the challenges that we have in our society. There is no more wars. We have solved cancer. We have solved fusion energy, so energy is free basically, and we are free to pursue whatever passion and creativity that we may have. How do you see potentially a future like that would look like, and do you believe that will happen?
I actually know the answer. Just kidding.
I love that entry point into this conversation. I actually know the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a born optimist, and I think it like a skeptical optimist, I would say. Like there are definitely going to be some problems along the way when people get challenged about their like on their jobs. Say the creative artists that we see today in Hollywood and so on, they are kind of raising the issue that is apparent now, and we're going to see that all over, I think. But that's from a kind of a history perspective of humanity, I think that's going to be just like a frame in the history of humanity.
It's a transition to something else.
Yeah,
and during that transition, it will be some hardship.
Yeah, and I value spending time with my cats so much. And if I could just have, say, 4 more hours every day, I would spend it with them. Just imagine if I could have a world where I can walk around with my cats and there was some assistant that made sure that they didn't run away or got killed by a fox or anything. I'd just be chilling with my cats and someone would help me making sure they're still there and healthy and so on. So I think there are going to be some major hiccups where people really suffer. But a lot of most innovation, I think, comes from problems. So we will have to face these problems to see a solution coming up, because the solution is not going to be there before the problem. So we're going to have a lot of problems first, not coming all at the same time, but a pretty substantial amount of big problems, I think. And then we're going to solve them. And the motivation as a species is just to survive, I think. So, yeah. I mean, technically, humanity could be eliminated today if the wrong person got the right power and so on. You could argue the wrong person already got the power and they didn't kill humanity. So yes. I think, I just think that we are going to face a lot of problems, but I see AGI or like even super intelligence as something credible in the future.
Are you looking forward to it? Or?
If I'm living during that time, which I think I will be,
there's think you'll be living to experience it.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent. I mean, obviously, in 100 years when I don't live, I think there's going to be an even greater intelligence. But I think I'm going to live it during a time where my intelligence will be seen as something laughable, like really.
If you take the Sam Altman definition of some kind of AI system that has at least the intelligence of an average coworker, and we certainly don't have it yet, but do you have any time estimates? You know, we have Ray Kurzweil saying 2029. I think Sam Altman was saying something like 2027. Another are seeing 2050. And who knows?
I mean, we're seeing benchmarks where AI outperforms humans in some aspects already.
Yes.
So I guess it's hard to say when that's on a general level. I think for a very long time there are some things that humans are going to be better at, like socializing. And then some other more kind of non-social things where AI will be better than humans. And I think generally speaking, most tasks that we do will be assisted by an AI to a large extent within like 5 to 10 years.
I'm almost starting to reformulate my understanding for this question.
Yeah.
Hypothesis. I think the definition is sliding. I think if you went back 30 years in time and asked for a definition of AGI, and with that current knowledge of what that meant, I think I can find definitions that we have already passed AGI. And then as we become more mature to what it is, and we get into pseudo discussion on pseudo discussion on pseudo discussion, what is intelligence, what is cognition, we are moving the goalposts, and it's happening right now. And we are trying to get sharper definitions. We had the 5-level definition by DeepMind. That is kind of the best I've seen so far. My argument is that at some point this becomes an irrelevant question, and it's a matter of how you frame it. We have passed it or we have not passed it. And the point will be, at some point in 2050, we will look back at it and say, I guess we kind of passed it in 29 or 27, and then we can have a detailed argument about, was it this event or this event? And it won't matter. Yeah. So we will pass it, and we won't understand it until 10 years after. That is my hypothesis.
I agree, actually. And it will be more the boiling the frog rather than the hard takeoff kind of AI. Yes. So some people are arguing like it will be some single event, some company that come up with a super innovative solution, and suddenly we have AGI. And I do not believe in that scenario at all. And
it's that whole rapid... Marcus Tegmark, Leave 3.0, he makes a forward, an introduction. Have you read the book? But where he sort of makes a storyline, like a science fiction storyline, that something happens and it goes in a really rapid... and it's actually, his argument, it's happening super rapidly, but it's happening in stealth. So the AI is there, and most of the world don't even understand that it's an AI, pulling the strings.
Yeah.
But it's sort of it's the scenario with a very rapid, like at 12 o'clock, it got out. And maybe
it's a Skynet moment of Terminator.
It's a Skynet. It's a Skynet. It's a rapid development scenario. And then, of course, Max is also then highlighting, what's the opposite? What is the muddle through scenario, or whatever you want to call it? And I think it's going to be if you look at human evolution, it's going to be one of those moments. They didn't know the printing press was a revolutionary thing when they did this first 2 ones or 3 ones. They can look at that in hindsight, and I think it's going to be the same.
I think also like looking at opinions and how our opinions are being made or built, that's already to some extent driven by an AGI. Because a lot of opinions, like how you should look and how you should behave and the ideal about people is not made by humans themselves. Like if you would actually ask a person, like, do you like the fact that you have to look in this way, or that the ideal is in this way? I think the answer is no. I don't have any statistical proof, but I'm surprised if most people would say like I am actually driven by my own ideal and so on. And then again, like the problem of that is apparent right now, I think. And then the solution, I think, will come, like where people actually get the kind of mandate and the power to make their own opinion.
We all know there are more intelligent people, humans, already in the world than ourselves, than all of us. But we don't fear them. I actually are very happy that we have more intelligent people than any of us. I'm really glad for that. And some people even argue that if you look at organizations as an organization, as an organism, they are potentially, as a collection of humans, much more intelligent than any single human. So then we certainly have very much more intelligent organisms already today in our society, and you could potentially argue that if some single organization becomes super powerful, as we are potentially seeing with some of the tech giants, that could be a bad thing.
Yeah.
But we certainly have organisms that are much more intelligent than any single humans already today.
Yeah, you're right, and that's just a very slow neural network.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that doesn't really fear me about that is this is so slow that I feel that I can be this small organism moving around it, but they're definitely smarter than me.
Yeah.
This was a good exploration this time. This is the sort of final question statistic that we are building up over at least 20.
We should gather this.
We need to gather some data. Modular made some good data on this last time. We need to ask them for a deep dive on this data. We've been asking the same question, and it's an interesting.
Well, let's continue that after the camera goes off here. So, with that, I'm super happy that you came here, Fredrik Stockman, and hope you can stay on for some more off-camera after work discussions.
It was super nice to be here.
So
good
thank
fun,
you very
man.
much.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, it's super nice people. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Yeah, cheers.